Yes, sir. Excellent question. Number one, the mistake that I made, the biggest mistake that I made in pursuing my doctorate in psychology was not using military science to get through the program. And what I mean by that was that I wore my thoughts and my beliefs and my colors on my sleeve. Whenever discussion came up about race or psychology, I would not hesitate to let my professors and classmates know exactly what I was thinking, even though I was the only black man in the program. Because I said, this is who I am. I'm not changing it for nobody. And I'm going to tell them exactly what I think. And so when conversations came up that had nothing to do with psychology, for example, we had a discussion on the annexation of Palestine to give to the Zionists. And I gave my honest opinion during class with a Jewish professor who was the director of research, who was also instrumental in delaying my progression through the program. The mistake that I made was that I confused the battle with the war. If I could do it all over, I would have never given them any inclination of what my true political thought was. Why? There was no need to, quote unquote, keep it real in a training program. No need whatsoever, because I wasn't trying to change their college. I'm trying to change the existence and state and quality of life for black people in the society. So my fight, per se, was not with that college, but by virtue of letting them know everything about Umar Johnson to the point that some of them, and this is going to rock your mind, some of them would show up to lectures that I had in Philadelphia. When I used to give my lecture series at the African American Museum in Philadelphia, I did not invite them. I did not inform them that I had a lecture series, but there was a few times when I gave my presentations, guess who's sitting in the auditorium? Some of the professors from the college. And I think that the jealousy and animosity that they had with me centered on the fact that most people do not become successful or well-known as a psychologist until after they get their doctorate. But the fact that I was a nationally certified school psychologist, already in private practice, already established, well-known, on the lecture circuit without a doctorate, pissed off those Europeans, pissed them off. And the fact that I happen to be a Pan-Africanist who would let you know in a minute that I do not agree with interracial relationships and that I think half of what the white fathers of psychology had to say was a bunch of bullshit, because of that, they delayed and tried to prevent me from finishing. Now, the paradoxical thing about my progression through the program was the fact that being Umar Johnson is what led to my delay in completing the program. But at the same time, being Umar Johnson is what kept them from trying to expel me altogether. In other words, they were afraid that if I was released from the program, I might be able to embarrass the university because they were aware of my connections, politically, grassroots, and otherwise. So I suspect that they probably consulted some Negro psychologists in Philadelphia and asked them what did they think about a possible move by them to disconnect me from the program. And I think some white and some black people told them that that would be a bad mistake because with his connections, although he's grassroots, but that young man has enough connections to embarrass the hell out of this university, and you will lose a lot of money because even though white folks are racist, a lot of times they don't want to be associated with overt forms of racism. So your enrollment will drop amongst black and white students. So if you want to suffer those type of repercussions by going to war with this one black man, okay, I suggest you don't. So it was interesting because being who I am delayed me in finishing, but also being who I am posed enough threat to the power structure of that college that they felt or made the decision that it was best to let me finish and earn my stripes like everybody else. After all, we kept them here 2.5 years extra anyway. You see, so my advice to you would be this. Be able to distinguish between strategies, between battles and wars. Me getting to the doctorate was a battle. It was not the war. The war starts now. The war starts now. This is when the war starts, once you have your weapons. That doctorate is nothing but a weapon. It's not an ego booster. It's not a resume builder. I'm not really even going to use it because most of the work that I do is going to remain with our children and in the schools. Remember, it was a childhood dream. I only pursued it because it was a childhood dream. It will advance me in no way professionally. It was just a childhood dream. I've always been a nationally certified school psychologist. So my recommendation to you to wrap this up, my brother, is don't let them know who you are. Don't let them know what you think. Don't compromise yourself. Don't intentionally present yourself as something that you're not. Don't ever do that. We should never compromise our principles as black men. But if it's not necessary for you to make it clear what your position is on something, bite your tongue and get through the damn program. We need you in the war. We don't have time to get you to see you getting caught up in battles, getting your weapons. Get the damn weapons however you can get them. And once you're in the war, then you start shooting. Then you let people know what you think. But don't do what I did and start letting people know what you were going to do, how you were going to do it, and what you're thinking while you're still trying to get your weapons.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The advice is more for my younger sister who just got her doctorate. My undergrad degree, unfortunately, I was far too combustible for folks, and they definitely were not trying to allow me to continue to a next level with that. But I appreciate the advice.
To close us out, just what evidence are you seeing with regards to an attempt to, as you said, fabricate some sort of social disorder that will give racist man and racist woman an excuse to drop the hammer on black people in a real ugly way in this area of the world? If you could kind of give us that to close us out as to why we need to get serious about that warrior consciousness.
Certainly. And as you know, white supremacy has only been able to be in charge as long as it is because it does employ some of the best military thinkers in the world. And normally, what a conqueror does to maintain control is give the illusion to the oppressed that a genuine movement for change exists when, in all actuality, that movement for change is being financed by the conqueror and in the service of his continued control. For example, the Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, the so-called anti-capitalist socialist revolution in Russia was paid for by Wall Street. Adolf Hitler, that nationalist socialist revolution in Germany, financed by Wall Street. So historically, you see a lot of the great revolutions that were supposed to be a change in policy from the American way of doing things was actually created by America itself. Right now, with the whole Wall Street protests, with the protests that you see taking place in many so-called second and third world nations, that seems to be the new flavor politically right now. People are organizing and protesting. So I believe white supremacy is looking at that, strategizing, and they're saying, well, sooner or later, this protest spirit is going to hit black people. After all, they are the mothers and fathers of protest. So because we know the protest is going to hit, let us be in charge of it so it doesn't get organized by somebody who is sincere. In other words, we don't want Gus T. Renegade or Dr. Umar to end up being at the head of a true revolution in America being led by black folk for change. We don't want that. So what we have to do is create one. We got to find black people we can trust, create the revolution, get all black people hyped, get them believing in the leaders, and then get them to do something stupid that allows us to let the National Guard, the police, the Army, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard to come into the country or come into the inner city and exterminate them all. I'm saying that for the next 12 months, we're going to have to really scrutinize black leaders. We're going to have to really pay attention to these so-called black revolutionaries out here. Because when you study the background of some of these individuals, they have a very suspicious past, a very suspicious history. So we got to study these people to make sure no one who's trying to fabricate a revolution in this country, a reactionary revolution in this country, is actually being employed by or paid for by the United States government, the FBI, or the CIA. I believe, based on all my political analysis, that they're going to try to fabricate a revolution amongst black people that is not well planned, not well organized, but is reactionary in nature to give them an excuse to use their well-oiled military machine to speed up the process of African extermination in this country. Please be aware of reactionary Negroes talking big and bad.
That's a whole nother program right there, but man, I totally agree. Man, we are going to have to be on alert. All of this foolishness, and that's just my opinion, I could be wrong, but all of this foolishness, man, all I can say is I'm reminded, Homeland Security. You find out anyone works with Homeland Security, that also should pique some suspicion about what's happening. We'll have to discuss that on another program. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Fantastic information. Please visit the website, drumarabdullahjohnson.com. One more time, drumarjohnson.com. Phenomenal information, as I said at the very beginning, a superhero for black people to help us correct this problem. Man, it was a pleasure to have you on the program, sir.